She didn't even sign it with love. Just her name. No goodbye. No, I'll miss you. Just a stamp, an address, and a lie wrapped in courtesy. I remember the way the paper felt thick, expensive. Like everything she'd touched had to remind the world she was better than it. I read the letter 3 times, thinking I'd missed something, some hidden message in the margins. But no, it was exactly what it looked like. Instructions. Neat, cold, and final. "It's not forever," she wrote. "You'll be safer away from the eyes on me. You'll understand one day." I was 17. I didn't ask to be her secret, but I learned how to act like one. At the time, I didn't even have the words to name it what she was doing to me. I thought it was love in some warped form, a protection that hurt but came from fear, not cruelty. So I packed. I smiled through tears she didn't stay to wipe. And when the car pulled up to take me to the countryside, I stood on the porch waiting, watching her silhouette vanish behind the curtains. She didn't wave. "She is doing her best," my aunt said when I arrived. I nodded like I believed it, like I wasn't already rehearsing questions I'd never be brave enough to ask. I'd left behind everything. My school, my friends, my room with the cracked ceiling that looked like constellations when I couldn't sleep. But most of all, I left behind the version of myself that thought she mattered. That version didn't survive the silence. She wrote once, a few months after, a card for my birthday. Not a call, not even her handwriting, just the printed words on a glittery card someone else clearly picked. "Hope it's special." That was all. "Do you know what it's like to be erased while still breathing?" Because that's what she did. Not loudly, not in rage. Quietly, elegantly. The way she did everything. She unhooked me from her life like I was a stain on the hem of her dress. And still I defended her. She must have had a reason. She's just overwhelmed. She loves me. I know she does. I lied to myself better than she ever had to. The first real crack came 2 years later. I was in the village shop, flipping through a fashion magazine at the counter, pretending I wasn't counting coins in my pocket. Then I saw her, on page 6, smiling, poised, wearing the necklace I wasn't allowed to touch. She was at a charity gala standing next to a girl, younger than me, prettier, blonde. The caption read, "With her daughter, socialite, and rising starlet, Claire Beaumont." Her daughter. She never told the press she had another. I remember everything about that moment. The way the cashier said, "You all right, love?" The way my hands trembled so hard I dropped the magazine. The way the air left my lungs before the tears could find their way out. Claire, that was the name she used to whisper when she thought I was asleep. A name she never gave me. A name she gave her. That was when I realized I was the shadow. The first draft. The one that wasn't camera ready. I didn't exist in her world. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. Back at the cottage, I pulled the letter out from the box under my bed. It still smelled like her perfume. Faint, floral, expensive. I read it again with new eyes. And this time, it burned. It wasn't a favor. It wasn't about safety. It was about shame. I wasn't the daughter she paraded. I was the one who came too early, from the wrong man with the wrong timing. I was the one who could ruin the life she fought to create. So she sent me away. She didn't even say goodbye. That night, I took the letter to the field behind the house. It was damp and quiet. The stars above me blinked like they knew. I lit a match. Watched the flame kiss the edge of the paper. Watched the words curl and disappear into black. But even ashes carry memory. I didn't cry, not then, because something colder had taken root. Not hate, not even anger. Resolve. If she could forget me, then I would become unforgettable. If she erased me, then I would rewrite myself in ink too dark to ignore. Not out of revenge, but because I refused to be hidden. That was the night I stopped waiting to be chosen. The next day, I walked into the village hall and signed up for the internship I'd been too scared to apply for. a new name on the form. Hers. Not because I wanted it, because I would make it mine. And one day, when she heard it again on lips she couldn't control, in rooms she didn't own, she would know. I was back, but not as her shame, as her storm. And she wouldn't see me coming until I was standing in her spotlight. I felt it the moment her arms wrapped around me. Too tight, too long, like she was holding something and not me. She pulled back first, like always. Her lipstick perfect, her perfume familiar in a way that used to comfort me, but now it felt like a costume, a signature she didn't write anymore. "You've grown so much," she said, eyes skimming me like a stranger taking stock. I smiled because I was trained to, but something in me whispered, "Don't relax." Not yet. She led me inside the house I hadn't seen in 4 years. Everything looked the same, but smaller somehow, like the walls had pulled closer, like the floor remembered every step I'd taken as a child and was now shrinking from them. She poured tea without asking if I still stilled it that way. Milk, no sugar, like I was frozen in time for her, or maybe conveniently preserved. "I kept your room the way it was," but when I walked up the stairs later, the door was shut, and the air inside smelled like paint. New curtains, a different bedspread, no photos, no trace of me, kept the room. No, she kept the idea of me. We sat in the lounge as the sky darkened, pretending we had things to say. She talked about weather, the garden, the charity she'd been chairing, how Claire had just finished her music tour. Oh, didn't I see it in the papers? Claire, that name again, the polished one, the daughter she kept close. And I was the seasonal visit, the ghost granted limited entry. But I didn't show it. I smiled, nodded, asked about roses and fundraisers and reporters, and every time she laughed, I watched how her eyes didn't move. Her mouth lifted, her voice softened, but her eyes, flat, still, careful. It's strange how you can crave someone's love and distrust it at the same time, like drinking from a poisoned cup because it's the only one with your name on it. After dinner, we sat by the fire. She offered me wine. I declined. She said, "You always were the cautious one." I wanted to ask, "Is that why you sent me away?" But I didn't, because I knew what she'd say. She'd smile, tilt her head, touch her pearls, and lie. "You know I missed you terribly," she said suddenly, like it hurt to admit it. But there was a hesitation, a flicker in her throat, a pause not long enough to notice unless you were looking for it. There's something cruel about being loved conditionally. It makes you fight for scraps like they're diamonds. So I said, "I missed you too," and part of me meant it. The part that remembered her brushing my hair before school, the way she used to sing out of key while washing dishes, the way she once said I was her mirror. But that mirror cracked. She never talked about the real reason I was sent away. Not that night, not the next, and not the one after that. But she asked questions, little ones, odd ones. "Do you keep in touch with anyone from town? Did you ever speak to that boy again? What was his name, Elliot? Do you still write those silly little poems in notebooks?" They sounded casual, curious, but I could hear the pulse beneath them. She was checking, measuring, making sure her version of the past still held. I answered carefully, not because I owed her caution, but because I wanted to see how far she'd go to protect her lie. On the third night, I found the envelope. It wasn't addressed to me, it was addressed to Claire, tucked into the drawer of her study, beside bills and receipts and charity invitations. It wasn't open yet. I recognized the handwriting instantly. My father's. The man she said had abandoned me. The man she swore hadn't written in years. But here he was, in ink, in curves I'd memorized before I could read. I stood there, holding it, my hand shaking. Not from rage, not even from shock, from clarity. She'd been writing him, or at least he had been writing her, and she gave his letters to Claire, not me. She walked into the room before I could put it down. We locked eyes. For the first time that week, her smile fell. She didn't pretend, didn't panic. She just looked at the letter in my hand and said, "You weren't supposed to find that." I nodded. She took a breath, slow and quiet. "It's complicated. I'm sure it is. I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. And there it was again, that hug in words. Tight, too long, but never warm. Something in me let go in that moment. Some last hope. Some old version of love that still tried to bloom in poisoned soil. "You did," I whispered. "You still are." She didn't deny it. She didn't say sorry. She just sat down in her chair like we were starting a conversation, not ending one. And I stood there, holding the truth like it weighed less than it should, because the part that broke me wasn't the lie. It was that her eyes never changed. They were still empty, dead. I didn't know it was gone until I reached for it. The hanger was still there, empty, swinging like it had been ripped down in a hurry. At first I thought maybe the maid moved it, or maybe I left it somewhere else. But then I smelled it. Faint, acrid, hidden beneath lemon polish and old wood. Smoke. I found the ashes in the garden bin behind the kitchen, still warm, a scrap of lilac satin clinging to the edge like it didn't want to let go. My hands went cold, my throat dry. That dress was the only thing I'd ever picked for myself. I'd saved for it, secretly, hidden away birthday bills and change, from errands and a crumpled envelope of tip money from the corner cafe. It took 7 months. It wasn't flashy, just soft and fitted in mine, a soft purple that made my skin glow, a neckline that dipped just enough to make me feel brave, not exposed. It was the dress I planned to wear to the spring dance, the one she said was a waste of time, filled with shallow people. I didn't care. I just wanted one night, one where I wasn't her mistake, one where I got to be seen without shame stitched to my back. When I asked her about the dress, her expression didn't even flicker. She poured her tea, stirred it once, set the spoon down like it was a ceremony. Then she looked up at me and said, "I did you a favor." My stomach dropped. "You're not ready for that kind of attention," she continued. "You think boys are kind. They're not. They'll eat you alive. And I won't watch you fall apart for someone who doesn't deserve you." My hands were clenched by then, fingernails pressing crescents into my palms. "You could have told me," I said. "It wasn't yours to decide." She tilted her head, a soft, practiced frown on her face. "I'm your mother. Everything is mine to decide." That's when I knew it wasn't about protection. It was about control. It wasn't the world she thought I wasn't ready for. It was her world. The world she curated, clean, polished, reputation first. And I was the wrinkle in her image, the truth she tried to dress up in silence and obedience. That dress threatened her balance, because it meant I was growing into something she couldn't shape anymore. So she burned it. Quietly, while I slept, like a coward, I went back to my room that night and sat on the bed for hours. The windows were open, but the air didn't move. It just hung there, heavy and still, like it didn't want to be part of the moment either. I stared at the corner of my closet where the dress had hung. I could still see it. I could still feel the fabric on my skin. It had been more than a garment, it was a choice. My first real one. And she took it without even looking back. That's what hurt most. Not the fire, not the lie, the ease. She didn't flinch, didn't apologize, didn't even try to comfort me. She believed she was right, and she wore that righteousness like armor. That night, I wrote in my journal something I hadn't done in months. One line, over and over again. "I am not yours to silence." My handwriting got messier each time, until it stopped looking like words and more like a scream on paper. The next morning, I came down dressed in all black. She raised an eyebrow. "You look like you're going to a funeral." "I am," She smiled. A slow, amused thing. Whose? I held her stare. Yours. She laughed. Just once, a short, disbelieving sound. But I meant it. Not her body, not her life, just the version of her I still hoped would see me. That version died the moment she chose control over love. The moment she watched my fire burn and didn't feel the heat. After breakfast, she handed me a brochure for a finishing school in France, said she, pulled some strings, said it would straighten out the wildness she saw blooming in me. I took it, not because I agreed, but because I needed time. Time to plan, to gather pieces of myself she hadn't stolen yet. I smiled at her big and bright. Her eyes didn't trust it. Good. I went back upstairs and slipped the ashes from the garden bin into a silk pouch. I tucked it into the bottom of my suitcase, not as a keepsake, as a reminder. Every time I touch it, I remember what I lost. And every time I breathe it in, I remember what I became. So when I show up years from now on the stage she never thought I'd reach, wearing a name she tried to bury, I'll carry the scent of fire with me, and I'll smile, the way she taught me, with my lips, not my eyes. She looked right through me when I walked in, like I was part of the wallpaper, something decorative but forgettable. I remember clutching my purse tighter, as if that would stop my chest from tightening. The lights were low, the room golden, full of polished laughter and champagne flutes catching chandeliers like fireflies. Everyone looked perfect. Her world always did. She spotted me eventually, or maybe someone whispered in her ear that I'd arrived. "Oh, darling," she said, coming over with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her pupils. "You made it. Isn't this just divine?" Her arms wrapped around me light, the way someone hugs a coat on a hanger. I tried not to stiffen. I tried to believe this meant something, but I could smell the perfume she used to wear when she was hiding something. "Come, meet everyone," she said, looping her arm into mine like we were close, like we'd always been close, but her grip was just tight enough to steer me, and I let her. Because for a second, I still wanted to belong. We wove through the crowd. People smiled at her, kissed her cheeks, complimented her dress, her hosting, her daughter. No one asked who I was. She never introduced me. Not once. I stood beside her while she told stories that erased me. She talked about Claire. Of course she did. Claire, with her music, her travels, her magazine cover. Claire who called every Sunday. Claire who wore pearls and perfection like they were stitched into her bones. Claire, the daughter who lived in her light. I was the one sent to grow in the dark. Someone toasted her to a life well lived, to the woman who has it all. They all laughed and raised their glasses. She beamed, soaking it in like sunlight. And I stood behind her, near the window, invisible in my black dress with the snagged hem. I could see my reflection in the glass, faint, blurry, like a ghost, like I wasn't really there. At one point, I whispered, "I'm proud of you," just to see what she'd do. She blinked, smiled, then leaned in and said, "Don't start drama tonight, please." I flinched, not because she said it, because I expected her to. She knew how to press bruises without leaving fingerprints. I wandered toward the back of the room, found myself near the dessert table, pretending to study eclairs I wasn't hungry for. I overheard two women talking nearby. One of them said, "I didn't even know she had another daughter." The other replied, "Maybe it's a cousin or something." I didn't correct them, because I didn't know what I was anymore. Not to her. Not in that house. Not in that story. At some point I slipped outside. The garden was lit with tiny bulbs hanging from the trees. The night air was cool and smelled like mint and smoke. I sat on the stone bench where I used to read when I was 12 before she sent me away. The music drifted out from the open patio doors, muffled now, like the soundtrack of someone else's movie. I watched the guests dance and laugh and shine in her orbit. And I realized something. I could scream right then and no one would hear it. Not because they were loud, because they weren't listening. She built this life to bury her past, And I was part of that past. A locked drawer, a faded photograph she didn't frame. She didn't forget me. She just erased me. That's different. It's deliberate. When I walked back inside, she was on the piano bench, laughing beside some man in a suit who looked like he belonged in a magazine, her arm draped casually around him, her mouth wide with performance, and for the first time, I didn't feel sad. I felt clear, like glass finally wiped clean. She wasn't lying for me. She was lying about me. And if someone had handed her a choice, this glamorous empire or the girl she left behind, she burned the girl twice just to keep her dress unstained. So I did what I never thought I would. I walked right up to her, waited until she noticed, until the laughter dipped and people glanced over, and I smiled, the kind of smile she, polite, poised, polished to perfection. Then I leaned close and whispered softly in her ear, "You can't unwrite me forever." She didn't respond. She didn't blink, but her jaw locked, stepped back, turned around, and walked out of her house without looking back. It was just a piece of paper, folded once, creased down the middle, tucked neatly between dusty albums in the drawer she thought I'd never open. I didn't even know what I was looking for. Maybe an old photo, a childhood birthday card, some proof that I had once mattered in that house. What I found was my birth certificate, except it wasn't mine. Not the name, anyway. I read it twice. Then again, slower. The date matched. The place. The time. My mother's name. Everything lined up like puzzle pieces except the one piece that was me. Because next to child's full name wasn't the name I've carried my whole life. It was hers. Claire Beaumont. I froze. My heart started doing this strange stutter in my chest. My hands trembled as if my body knew something before my brain could admit it. I whispered it aloud, soft, like testing if the sound would crack. Claire? No, I wasn't Claire. Claire was the one in the magazines, the one they invited to galas, gifted pearls, bragged about in salons. The golden girl with the smile that made people lean in and the voice that never trembled in public. I was the girl sent away, the one who didn't fit. So why did I have her name? I carried the certificate to the light like maybe that would change what I saw, like maybe it would make sense if I read it again under sunlight, not shadows. But the truth wasn't hiding. It wasn't whispered. It had been buried, and someone had written over it with a story they preferred. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes, maybe longer, just staring at it, like it might confess something if I stared hard enough. Then I heard her heels in the hallway. Slow, measured, like always. She stopped when she saw me. Her gaze dropped to the paper in my hand. She didn't flinch. I waited for her to lie. I waited for her to laugh and say, "Oh, that's nothing," or that's just a mistake, or "Give me that, it's old." But she didn't lie. She just sighed, a tired, heavy thing. "I hoped you'd never see that," she said. My voice cracked on the edge of something sharp. "Why does it say Claire?" She closed the drawer behind me. Calm, controlled, like this wasn't the moment my world came undone. "That was your name," she said, "before I changed it." I blinked. "What?" She rubbed her hands together like she was cold, even though the room was warm. "You were born Claire Beaumont. I registered you that way. But when he left, I couldn't." Her voice wavered just once. "I couldn't let that be your story. His name, his shadow. So you gave me a new one," I whispered. She looked at me like I should be grateful. "I don't understand." "That name came with consequences. Questions, judgments. I had to protect you. You were so small, so helpless. And I did what I thought was best." "No," I said, shaking my head. "You did what was best for you." Her jaw tightened. "You erased me," I said. "You rewrote me like I was a problem you could rename." She stepped closer. You had a beautiful childhood. You had everything. I laughed. One sharp, hollow sound. I had silence. I had shame. I had questions I was too scared to ask because I knew the answers would ruin everything. I was crying now and I didn't care. I let the tears fall because they belonged to every version of myself that had never been allowed to exist. You kept her, I whispered. The other Claire. The name. The life. You just gave it to someone else. She didn't deny it. And in that silence, everything shattered. The childhood birthdays that felt like obligations, the half-truths about where I came from, the way she always looked at me like she was expecting me to break into pieces. She couldn't explain. Now I knew why. Because I wasn't a daughter. I was a revision. And she thought love could hide it. But love doesn't erase. It remembers. It holds. It doesn't burn the truth and hope the ashes forget how to speak. I folded the certificate with slow hands. Gentle, like it was the last fragile link to a story I never got to write. She reached for my shoulder. I stepped back. I need time, I said, and answers. Real ones. Her lips parted, but no words came. I walked past her, through the hallway that suddenly felt narrower than before. My name echoed in my head, every syllable now feeling borrowed, distant, wrong. Who am I? And that's what I kept asking as I opened the door to the world outside. And the worst part, I wasn't sure she'd ever let me find out. She didn't expect me to find the mirror. She certainly didn't expect me to break it. It had been hanging in the guest bedroom, covered for years with a lace cloth like something sacred or shameful. No one ever mentioned it. No one ever touched it. But that night I did. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after truth claws its way out of the walls, after names don't feel like names anymore, after a daughter realizes she was raised in someone else's reflection. I lifted the cloth gently. My fingertips trembled, not from fear but from something deeper, that feeling when your chest knows your life is about to divide into before and after. And there it was. The mirror was old, almost antique, framed in dark wood with tiny carvings around the edges, roses, thorns, something that once tried to look delicate, but didn't quite hide the danger underneath. It didn't just reflect my face, it reflected the lie of it. Because taped behind the glass, where only someone curious enough would see, were photographs, papered memories, and a letter. I pulled the backing open. The letter was yellowed, torn on one side. My name was written at the top. Except it wasn't my name. It was hers. Claire. Her handwriting was sharp, controlled. Not a single word out of place. If she ever finds this, it means I failed. That was the first line. My knees buckled. I sat on the edge of the bed and kept reading. She wrote about fear, about legacy, about how people only accept a certain kind of woman in her world, polished, composed, perfect, and how her first daughter was a risk to all of it. You were wild in a way I couldn't explain, she wrote. You felt too much, asked too much, needed too much, and I was too weak to let you ruin what I built. I couldn't breathe. She talked about the man she loved, the one who gave me his eyes but not his name, how he left her and left me, and how that abandonment turned into shame. A stain she tried to scrub off by creating a new version of me, a quieter, smaller girl, a girl who wouldn't get in the way, a girl she renamed, a girl she replaced. I gave Claire to the world because the world wanted someone easier. I couldn't stop shaking. My hands clutched the letter like it might rewrite itself if I held it tighter. I looked back up at the mirror, and suddenly I didn't know who I was staring at, because everything I thought I'd been, every version of myself I built from her half-answers and sidelong glances, was crumbling. That's when I did it. I reached out and touched the glass, and then I pressed harder. It cracked, a thin, white fracture across the center, splitting my reflection in two. And I didn't stop. I grabbed the edge of a picture frame from the dresser and slammed it into the glass. Once. Twice. The mirror shattered. Tiny pieces of my face rained down like glittered snow. I stood there, in the mess, breathing like I'd run miles. Heart pounding, chest rising and falling with a rhythm I hadn't felt since I was a little girl hiding in closets, trying not to cry loud enough for her to hear. There was blood on my palm. A shallow cut. Nothing dramatic. But it felt poetic. Because sometimes the only way to see clearly is to break what's been lying to you. She must have heard the noise. Her heels clicked down the hallway seconds later. She stopped in the doorway. Eyes scanned the room, the broken glass, the letter in my hand. And she just whispered, "So, now you know." I laughed. It came out bitter, hollow, ugly. "Now I finally know," I said. "I know you were never protecting me. You were protecting them, their idea of you, their perfect little world." She stepped closer. "You were too much for that world." "No," I snapped. "I was just enough for a world you were too scared to face." She tried to say something else, but I held up the letter. This isn't love. This is cowardice dressed in pretty words." Her mouth trembled. "Just a little. You'll understand one day," she whispered. "I already do," I said. And I meant it. I understood that. She built her entire life around a story where I didn't get to speak, where I played the quiet shadow so her spotlight could shine brighter. But not anymore. I walked past her, blood still dripping from my hand. I didn't bother to grab a bag, not even my shoes. I just needed out. She called after me, soft, desperate. "Where are you going?" I didn't turn around. "I'm going to find the girl you tried to erase. And this time, I won't be coming back as her." She told me it was for my own good, just like she always did. Then watched me fall apart like it was part of the plan. But this time, I didn't break the way she expected. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, her words still floating in the room like perfume that wouldn't fade. "You need to stop imagining a life that isn't yours." She said it with a softness that cut deeper than any scream. Calm, dismissive, like I was a child clinging to a dream I'd outgrown. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, listening, letting the silence spread through me like a second skin. And in that silence, I made a vow not to destroy her, but to outlive the version of me she created, the quiet girl, the obedient one, the girl who was always too much in private and not enough in public. I looked around the room she gave me. 4 walls painted in pastel lies, a bed that never felt like mine, a window that faced nothing but hedges tall enough to keep me hidden. I took in every detail like it might vanish, because soon it would. She knocked on the door before entering like it mattered now. "I hope you understand," she said, standing in the doorway like she was waiting for applause. "I've worked too hard for this life, for Claire's future, for our family's name. I can't let you unravel things. Unravel, as if my existence was a loose thread she could just snip and tidy away." I looked at her, really looked, and saw it. The fear under the flawless face, the desperation hiding in that iron spine. She didn't just lie to protect herself. She lied because deep down she knew who I could become if I ever stopped shrinking. So I didn't answer her, didn't argue, didn't plead. I just nodded, and that terrified her more than anything else. She left the room like she'd won, like my silence was surrender, but it wasn't. It was the start of something. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment she bent me into a shape that suited her, every secret she buried under the word protection, every time she told the world Claire was her only daughter while I stood behind the curtain, watching my life be performed by someone else. I didn't sleep. I studied. I remembered. I traced back the exact moment I stopped asking questions. The moment she saw that flicker of defiance in me and smothered it with guilt. I remembered the birthday party she canceled at the last minute because we don't draw attention. I remembered how she hid my father's letters in a locked drawer, then told me he'd never written. I remembered how she taught me silence by punishing my voice. And in all of it, I found something I'd never truly touched before. Power, not the kind you steal, the kind you claim. I woke up before the sun, packed only what I needed: journal, passport, the hidden birth certificate, a photograph of him, the man she said didn't care. The man who might have been forced out like me. I didn't leave a note. She didn't deserve one. The train station was empty that early. I watched my reflection in the glass as it pulled away from the platform. My face looked older somehow. Still, set. I thought about the girl she tried to erase, the one who laughed too loud, who wore red when everyone else wore beige, who wanted more than approval, who didn't belong in her world because she was meant to build her own. That girl wasn't gone. She was becoming. In that quiet train car, I made a list, not of revenge, not of ways to hurt her, but of truths, the ones she buried, the ones I would now dig up and place like stones in the foundation of a new life. Truth in one, I was never the problem. Her fear was. Truth in one, I carry his blood in my own name. Truth in three, she will hear from me again, not as her mistake, not as her secret, but as the daughter who outgrew her silence. I don't know where I'm going yet, but I know who I am now, and the next time she sees me, I'll be standing somewhere she can't erase, because I'm done hiding behind someone else's story. Now I'm writing my own, and the first line is this: she thought silence meant defeat, but it was just the sound of me loading the gun. She once told me whitewashed me out. It made my skin look dull, like I didn't shine the way Claire did. That's why I chose it. Not cream, not champagne. White, sharp, clean, unforgiving. It wasn't a dress meant to blend in. It was cut low in the back, high at the neck, with silk that caught the light like water catches the moon. It moved when I moved. It whispered when I walked. The moment I stepped into the gala, the room shifted. Not loudly, not all at once, but I felt it. The way conversations paused just long enough to glance. The way champagne glasses hovered mid-air. The way she looked at me and didn't recognize me for a full 2 seconds. I counted. 1, 2, and then her lips parted. That same elegant smile frozen in place. I kept walking. It was the same ballroom. She always used gold ceilings, white roses, violins, everything just curated enough to feel effortless. She hosted galas like royalty, untouchable, perfectly lit, always photographed from her best side. But that night, her best side was no longer the only thing the cameras wanted. I wasn't on the list. I wasn't invited. But I belonged, not because she said I could, because I decided I did. People whispered. I could feel their curiosity pulling at me like static. Who is she? Is that... Wait, isn't that... I didn't stop to answer them, because this night wasn't about them. It was about her and me, finally in the same room, same light, same truth. I made my way to the stage. She was standing there already, waiting to speak. A white mic in her hand, her gown glittering like broken stars. Claire was beside her, smiling politely, holding a clutch too small to hide behind. Then there was me, a different kind of daughter, the one who wasn't supposed to be seen. But I was done hiding. I didn't need a spotlight. I was the spotlight. She leaned slightly toward me, her voice low, controlled. What do you think you're doing? I smiled, wearing the color you swore would never suit me. A flicker of panic crossed her face, not fear, exposure. I turned to the crowd before she could stop me, took the microphone from its stand. She didn't grab my wrist. She didn't beg, because that would have drawn too much attention. And attention was the only currency she couldn't lose. I looked out at the room, at the donors, the board members, the press, all of them used to hearing her version of things, her voice, her facts, and I said it softly. Good evening. I won't take long. I just want to introduce myself. She stepped forward like she might interrupt, but I raised one hand, gentle, calm, and she froze. I'm the daughter who wasn't in the brochures, the name you won't find on her bio. the one sent away to keep the family portrait neat. The silence that followed didn't feel shocked. It felt ready. I breathed in. I breathed in. My chest didn't shake. She told you I didn't belong. That I was difficult. That I didn't fit. I turned to her, let her see what I'd become. But what she really meant was I remembered too much. Claire dropped her clutch. It hit the marble floor like a punctuation mark. I didn't need to say more, because it wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming space. The space I was denied. The name I was stripped of. Story I was forced to live beneath like a rug someone keeps tripping over but never lifts. I stepped down from the stage before she could recover, and I walked toward the exit, every heel click echoing louder than applause. She didn't follow me, but I heard her voice behind me barely above a whisper. You'll regret this. I paused, just for a moment, then turned my head just enough so she could see my profile under the chandelier light. No, I said. You will, and as the doors closed behind me, I swear I heard the cameras turn away from her, toward me. He was always in the background, standing just far enough to blend in, just close enough to know. His name was Martin, my mother's right hand, her fixer, her confidant, her shadow. He drove her places, kept her secrets, opened doors that weren't supposed to open, and closed others with me on the wrong side. I remember being 12, waiting on the steps in a new dress. She never told me looked beautiful. Martin was the one who told me the event was canceled, even though I later saw the photos in the newspaper. He didn't lie, he just never told the truth. And still, I never hated him, because even then, I knew. He knew. Every time I looked into his eyes, I saw it. The weight, side hesitation, the kind of silence that isn't weakness, it's survival. He knew she wasn't who she claimed to be. He knew I wasn't where I belonged, and he never said a word, not when she sent me away, not when she denied me, not when she smiled for the cameras while I sat across the country learning how to disappear. I didn't see him for years, not until the gala. He was by the entrance, wearing the same charcoal suit, hands behind his back, eyes scanning like always. His hair was grayer, his face softer, but his silence, still razor sharp. When I stepped inside wearing white, his eyes met mine, and he nodded. It wasn't big, it wasn't dramatic, but I felt it. That nod sliced through years of erasure like a blade. He didn't smile. He didn't rush over. He just stood with me, and for the first time, his silence didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like acknowledgement. When I took the microphone, when I said the words she never thought I'd say out loud, I saw him in the corner of my vision. Still, watchful, but this time, not for her. For me. He didn't blink when I called myself her daughter. He didn't flinch when I told the room about the life she'd tried to keep hidden. He just watched. And that, his stillness, was louder than applause, because he was the one who could have ruined me long before I ever found the courage to rise. He had the keys, the letters, the files, the truth, and he chose to let me uncover it, not to protect her, but because he knew the difference between being handed power and earning it. After the speech, after the room rippled in whispers and my mother's face shattered in porcelain panic, I stepped outside. Needed air, needed space. He followed. Not close, not pushy, just enough to make it clear he was there. I turned around. Why didn't you say anything? His voice was steady, low, like gravel warmed in the sun, because it wouldn't have meant anything coming from me. I blinked. You had to know, he said. In your bones. You had to feel it, not be told. He looked away then, toward the horizon, where the trees curled against the skyline like they were listening. I tried to hint, he added. Letters left where you'd find them, notes that weren't destroyed. I remembered. The envelope that showed up at my school but had no return address. The box of old photos Claire never saw. At the time, I thought they were accidents. Now I knew better. Why help me? I asked. He met my eyes. Calm, unapologetic. Because you're her daughter, he said, but not like her. And that hit harder than anything she ever told me. We stood there, in silence. Not awkward, not cold. It was the kind of silence built from truth too sacred to speak. I took a breath. Will she fire you? He shrugged. She won't, not after tonight. You didn't destroy her. You rewrote her ending. He stepped forward, just enough to reach into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small velvet pouch. Your father gave me this, he said. Told me to give it to you when you were ready. My heart stilled. I opened it slowly. Inside was a ring. Simple, gold, worn, engraved with a date. I didn't recognize until I realized it was the day I was born. I looked up at him. He loved you, Martin said quietly. She just loved herself more. And there it was, the truth I never heard, the one no one dared to say. He touched his hat, a quiet farewell, and walked away. No grand exit, no drama, just a man who knew everything, and finally let me carry it for myself. I looked down at the ring, curled it into my palm, and for the first time in my life I felt the weight of my own name. She always said the truth could be dangerous. I just never realized how quiet the danger would sound when it finally arrived. We were standing in the hallway of her house, the same one I was raised in, sent away from, forgotten by. Everything around us was polished and still. The chandeliers, the cold marble under my shoes, the portraits she hung of the life she wanted. Not a single picture of me. She'd just come from another gala. Pearls still around her neck, lipstick perfect, dress flawless. But her hands were twitching. She knew I was coming. I had called earlier and said, I need 10 minutes. She hesitated, then agreed. Probably thought I'd beg her to accept me again. She didn't know me anymore. We stood in silence for a moment. I think she thought she could wait me out, pretend like nothing needed to be said, like time would smooth over the missing years, the lies, the edits she made to her own motherhood. But I didn't come to ask for answers. I came to end the performance. I found the letter, I said quietly, the original certificate, the photos, all of it. Her eyes didn't widen. Her mouth didn't move. She just blinked, like she was running through a list of possible exits. Still, she said nothing. So, I stepped closer, calm, steady, because I wanted her to feel every word. You replaced me, I said. She looked away. A flicker, barely, but it was enough. She tried to answer. I did what I had to. I raised my hand. Don't. Not this time. Her voice faltered. And that's when I said it. Sand. 5 words. The ones that broke her. You are no one's mother. It didn't come out loud. It didn't have to. It landed in the room like shattered glass. She opened her mouth, but nothing came. Her eyes glistened. Not with tears, but with disbelief. Like I had dared to flip the script in a scene she thought she still controlled. She gasped, soft and shallow, and put one hand to her chest. I didn't move. She had taken everything from me, my name, my place, my father, my story, and I let her. For years I let her build a world on top of my silence. But now I was the one with the voice. You gave me life, I said. But you spent every moment after trying to make me forget I had one. She took a step back, bumping into the edge of the table where she kept her pressed roses and fake awards. Her hand knocked something off, maybe a framed photo of Claire, and it hit the ground without a sound. I did love you, she whispered. No, I said. You loved you, the version of you that didn't include me. She was trembling now, barely holding herself together. I had never seen her break before, but I didn't feel satisfaction, not even justice. I just felt clarity, like the storm in me had finally cleared and left something solid underneath. You always told me truth is dangerous, I said, but it was the lie that nearly killed me. She tried to speak again, her mouth opened, her throat moved, but no sound came out. And somehow, that silence said everything. She had lied so long, she didn't know how to speak in truth anymore. I turned away, not because I was finished, but because I had finally started. As I reached the front door, I heard her collapse into the chair behind her, and then, soft as a wound, who will I be without you? I paused, and for a moment, I thought of the girl I used to be, the one who waited for birthdays that were never celebrated, the one who wore hand-me-down shame like a skin, the one who learned to shrink so someone else could shine. And then I answered, I guess now you'll find out. And I left her sitting in a house built on silence, with no voice left to save her. They handed me the key to her empire with hands still warm from applauding her lies, and for a second, I almost took it. The boardroom smelled like old money and lavender polish. Her portrait hung behind the head chair, head tilted, eyes knowing, lips curved, like she was still in the middle of a secret. She always knew how to win a room, even dead. They called it her legacy. All of it. The foundation, the estate, scholarship fund named after the daughter she raised in public while burying the one she abandoned in private. Me. I sat at the long table where she used to hold court, wearing the white blouse she told me once made me look washed out. It didn't today. Today, it made me look like snow after fire. I hope you understand, the chairman said, passing me a leather folder. This is what she wanted. I opened it. There was the clause, neatly typed, legally binding. In the event of my death, Claire Beaumont's successor shall be my name, the one she never said out loud, the one she never let them print. I stared at it. She left it all to me, I asked, though I already knew. He nodded, smiling like it was a generous thing, a gift wrapped in velvet silence. She believed in legacy, he said, and she believed you had the strength to carry it. I almost laughed, because she didn't believe in me. She believed in control. Even now, she was trying to shake me, trying to pass the crown to the daughter who refused to bow. I looked around the room at the men and women who once ignored me at her events, who asked me if I was staff or a guest of someone important. They smiled now like I was royalty, but I wasn't here for their approval. I was here to decide if I wanted the throne she built out of betrayal. I need a moment, I said. They nodded, stepped out, left me alone with her shadow. I walked to the window, folder still in my hands. Outside, the gardens were blooming. Tulips, roses. She always liked things that looked beautiful from far away. But I remembered being 6, reaching for a rose, and bleeding from its hidden thorn. She told me to stop crying. Pain is part of being a woman, she said. I never forgot that. I sat on the edge of her chair, and opened the folder again. All the numbers were there. The holdings, the assets, the power. But none of it felt heavy. Not like the truth I'd carried for years. Not like the shame she sewed into me with every closed door. They thought this would feel like victory, but it felt like a trick, because I knew what came with it. Her name, her image, her myth. If I took the crown, I'd have to protect the story she told, share, but I had a different story. One she tried to bury beneath charity galas and flawless press releases. Mine didn't shimmer, it burned. The door creaked open softly. It was Martin. He stood there, silent as always. I know what they expect, I said. He nodded. But I don't want her legacy, I whispered. I know. I want something else. He stepped closer. What? I looked up at him, the man who had kept all her secrets and quietly handed me the keys to my own. I want the truth, all of it. In my name, in my voice. He didn't speak, but I could see the shift in his face. Respect. I walked back to the table, picked up a pen. They thought I'd sign. Instead, I flipped to the back page and started writing my own clause. One that wouldn't silence girls to protect powerful women, one that wouldn't hand inheritance to shadows, one that wouldn't pretend. When they returned, I handed the folder to the chairman. He read it, eyes widening slowly. You're rewriting her terms. No, I said. I'm writing mine. He looked confused, hesitant. This could damage the Beaumont name. I'm not a Beaumont, I said. I stood and looked him in the eyes. I'm the name she tried to erase, and now I'll make sure no one else has to grow up invisible just to keep someone else looking perfect. The room was quiet. not from fear, but from the sound of history splitting in half. And as I walked out, folder in hand, head high, I realized crowns are light, but truth is heavier, and I was finally strong enough to carry it, because I wasn't here to wear what she built. I was here to burn what never should have stood. She named me once, then spent the next 2 decades pretending I didn't exist. They say time heals, but time didn't heal me. Power did. It happened quietly, not with fireworks, not with screaming matches or courtroom drama. No headlines, no viral moment, just me, standing in the very room she once ruled, wearing her heels, wearing her name, but not her shame. She had passed, and the world mourned her like she was a saint, elegant, generous, visionary. The papers printed her legacy in gold. They taped the parts she told them to forget. They forgot me, the daughter she exiled for being inconvenient, too loud, too curious, too much like the man she'd loved and then erased when he didn't fit her narrative. She sent me away with silence. Now I'd come back with a microphone. The memorial was held in her favorite gallery. Marble floors, soft piano music, high ceilings that echoed like cathedrals. People stood around sipping champagne, complimenting each other's black dresses. The scent of lilies was so thick it made me feel like I was drowning in sweetness. She would have loved it. She always said grief was best dressed in beauty. I walked in 15 minutes late, on purpose. All eyes turned, not because they recognized me, but because I looked familiar, like someone they'd almost remembered. I wore a tailored white suit, her pearls, the same shade of lipstick she swore only looked good on certain skin tones. And I walked like I belonged, because now I did. They whispered. Of course they did. Who is she? Did she work with her? Was she family? And when I stepped up to the podium, the whispers turned to silence. Martin was there, in the back. He gave me the smallest nod, the only one who knew the whole story. I looked down at the speech someone else had written. Praises. Perfect lies. Then I looked back up, and I didn't read it. I'm not going to tell you who she was, I said. The air shifted. You already know who she showed you. You saw the press, the awards, the carefully chosen photographs, the version that never made a mistake. My voice didn't shake, but I knew another version, one who built her legacy on silence, one who thought a crown meant she could choose which daughters deserved to be named. Murmurs. One woman lowered her glass, another tilted her head like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. I'm not here to shame her, I said. I'm here to finish her. The room froze. Not because I was cruel, because I was honest. She taught me something, not with love, not with guidance, but through absence, through exile, through the hole she left in me when she chose image over intimacy. And that lesson was this. I looked directly at the portrait they hung of her behind me. No one can bury you unless you let them. I took off the pearls and laid them on the podium. She sent me away without a name. But today, I take hers. I reached into my bag, pulled out the legal documents, changed, signed, publicly filed. I wasn't the hidden daughter anymore. I was her, but rewritten, unapologetic, unowned, the real Claire. I will take this legacy, I said, but not to preserve it. I smiled. I'm here to burn the parts she built with fear and rebuild what should have been done in truth. Gasps. Some stepped back, others stepped closer, like watching a star implode. I didn't come for revenge, I whispered, softer now. I came for balance. I stepped down, left the papers. Left the script, and walked past every person who once pretended I didn't matter. This time, they moved for me. As I reached the door, someone called out, "Who are you?" I turned around slowly, looked her straight in the eyes, and said, "I'm the daughter she tried to forget, and the woman she never became."